Hello, everybody. This lecture is to support assignments 3 and 4. That would be the type challenge A and B. In this assignment, you are being asked to choose a particular style of typographic drawing. And there are 7 here that I'm going to show you. And you should spend some time with each of these and make some decisions on which interests you, which you feel would be a drawing that you could accomplish successfully given your own skill level and experience working in the software programs, and and as well conceptually which you feel that you might create the most successful um, solution. So I'd like to cover all of these and give you just a little bit more feedback outside of the instructions that are on the assignment page. So here's our first um, style, and this is a style of typography where words are collected together to create the filled space of the individual letters. So if you look at this particular drawing as an example, I am, it has 3 letters. So I think right off the bat, if you're thinking about using this particular style, you'd want to do a drawing that has minimal amount of letters. So you're not going to pick something with several words or a really long word that's like 7 or 8 letters, because that could take a lot of your extra time to try to fill those letter spaces with other words. So you're going to look for words that fill each of the letters, and those should be presented completely. So don't cut them off. So if you look at these individually, like the A, it has words like in love. So you can actually use 2 words, a phrase. Angry, weird, slow, fat, right? And then if you look at this a little bit more carefully, you realize that in developing the letter forms by using these phrases and other words, you can size up the words to be either larger or smaller, right? So like if you look at the M, you've got pissed, musical, sore, but then you have other smaller words like hungry or moody, right? Um, so the way to approach this would be to create a sheet with all the words that you'd want to use. Remember, keep in mind that these words need to have some correlation to the larger word that you're creating. So in this instance, this artist created all of these words to represent how they were feeling. One other thing is contrast. So you really want to create strong contrast so that there's so that the words are readable. In this instance, they went with like gray or sort of a charcoal color, and white um, lettering. So you can also, this is very creative, so it's up to you. You can also choose to present some of these individual words inside the letters in bold type or italics, and others not. I do really suggest that you keep the typeface the same. So just use one typeface across. It's going to be easier. I also highly recommend encourage you to use a sans serif font. That would be one that does not have the serifs, because that's going to present a little bit easier for filling the letter spaces. Right, and our last couple of assignments should inform you on kerning and letter spacing and so forth, because you're going to have to do that with these as well. These small words that are inside the the larger letters. The second option is this option to do letter forms, And in this way, you're really going to have to use a pen or a pencil and a sheet of paper to draw out. And I've had students create this particular style with like word or frog. So you probably want to try to find an object that you think you could um, modify the letter shapes into corresponding like arms and legs or tails or the face in a pretty easy way. This is obviously a fantastic option here, very professional. But you'll notice that the space between each of the letters here, Crocodile, that it's uniform, so it doesn't dissect or create like kind of confusion in our eyes. We really see it together, held together strongly by all of these parts because of the spacing being unique and also because each letter is about the same scale and the same width. So that also pulls it all together. So you really want to think about harmonizing your drawing through repetition and scale and and rhythm, and then making these alterations to the letters so that they also represent other parts of the object in a really effective way. And again, you can be very creative with this. This one uses ligatures or swashes to form sort of positive and negative space. So you really want to create a typographic drawing here where the letters are thick. You can't really do this with a thin typeface. So you really need a bold typeface. And you could use serif here or sans serif. I think serif fonts um, or Gothic fonts present a little bit more of an interesting visual element because they lend themselves well. And ligatures are really these swashes and decorative elements that surround the typography so that it expands it and makes its presence bigger both in width and height, but also complements it as well. So in this instance, the artist used black and white to make it very bold on a black background. And so, you can see how that worked out through this sort of visual kind of kaleidoscope. Now here's an option. The other ones I mentioned, probably you would want to work in a vector-based program like Affinity Designer or Adobe Illustrator. This one might also just as well be accomplished in Adobe Photoshop or Affinity Photo. And here you really need to go out there and collect all of these objects that you can then, similar to the crocodile, you're basically um, you're basically arranging these objects so that they collectively spell out the word. So it could be really anything as long as it's legible. And you can sort of take liberties here in developing these as well. And you'll notice to make this sort of pop at the very end, once all the images were assembled, the artist created a drop shadow. So what you probably want to do is put everything onto one layer and then choose a filter to create a drop shadow if you want to do that. They also used a very interesting background. They used a radial gradient. So if you go to the gradient tool, you can do a linear or a radial gradient, which kind of makes the background go from a lighter focal point towards the center, out towards a darker edge. And that kind of helps to focus the viewer's eye on the center part of your drawing. Here in option 5, this is just pulled from the Google Doodle, And this is very similar to the last one. It's just a sort of a different take on how to accomplish that. And in this instance, it's just not using multiple photos or objects. Instead of it being photography, it's all illustration. So it's illustration based, where the previous one is all photography based. And it's fewer objects. So like the O the O's in Google are basically just one object, just basically the egg or the apple. The candle is the L, right? And it's very abstract because like with the koi here, used as the E and also as the G, you know, the viewer understands obviously what this is by context, and so they can they can figure that out pretty easily that it's Google. Now, this is a little bit more, I think this option, I think, is a really challenging option, but it's really part of what is known as the international style or the Swiss style. And we will be looking at this more during the semester. But what this is all about is it's sort of a technique of arranging type on a grid. But that grid has been slightly tilted to a diagonal. So, and what that angle is not, it can be up to interpretation. So you can make it a little bit more extreme of an angle or a little bit lower of an angle. But the idea is that everything, all of the typography fits on an angle. And this particular challenge will require you to really plan ahead, conceptualize how you want to present the angles and where you might want to go outside of typical typography to make it all pull together. So if you notice here, like with the T, there's been a ligature or an extension of a black rule up the left side that basically kind of acts as a boundary for the box here, this box here where there's smaller type. Also here with the T, you can't really see all of it, but it spells out type. The T has the edge of the T has been extended, right? So you could take those liberties. Same with the E here. And then you can, if you want to, or you don't have to, you can add again, similar to our very first style theme, you could add a word or a series of words inside. It sort of lightens up the typography. So that this would be solid black, like gear below, but by adding in the white letters and filling in the space, it gives it a sort of, it pulls it away from being quite so bold. The last option is, I think, one of the most challenging, although I've had students as of recently using other programs. I think maybe like Blender or 3D animation programs to develop this, and it's a bit faster. But the idea here is to create a three-dimensional letter. And I recommend, of course, because of just the sheer amount of time to create all of these planes and faces, like the right and the front and the top and the sides, to just choose one letter and then fill it with, you know, a whole bunch of different words. So yeah, so that's kind of your options there. And yeah, enjoy it. And for this particular assignment, we're going to be doing it twice, so you'll have a chance to try another theme and another style with the next assignment.